Okay, welcome everybody to our July council meeting. Just before we open the meeting, formally open the meeting, we will have a moment of reflection, silent reflection. And I know that he's not on our council per se, but Perth East Councillor Jerry Smith, his wife passed away, I believe, early this morning. So we can maybe remember the Smith family in our thoughts at this time. So we'll just bow our heads for a moment of reflection. Okay, thank you. All right, the first item up is confirmation of the agenda as it was circulated. There's nothing to add, I don't believe, is there, Dan? No, okay. So a motion to confirm the agenda as it was circulated, moved by Councillor Rose, seconded by Councillor Foster. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Does anybody have a conflict of interest with the agenda as it was circulated? Okay, if you find that you're getting into hot water as the night goes on, you can declare it at that time. So we have a delegation per se, and I'm going to move over to the side. We're going to recognize the U18 Mitchell Meteors, the hockey team that was the Ontario Women's Hockey Division C champs. Have I got that right? Okay. Yeah. This is where we do all the proclamations over here. So, and I'm honored to be here tonight, really am. Congratulate the Mitchell Meteors U18 girls hockey team on winning the gold championship of the Ontario Women's Hockey Association C last April. Your team had an impressive 42-6-4 record and ended the season on a 16-game unbeaten streak. That is tremendous. Our community is so proud of you all for facing the adversity of the season with some strong contenders to bring home gold to West Perth. It's no small feat to build the kind of strong bonds and camaraderie required to become a championship team, but you all rose to the challenge and emerged victorious. Your commitment to honing your individual skills and working together as a cohesive unit is a testament to your dedication to the sport. Your success is an inspiration to us all, and we can't wait to see what you can achieve next year. Certainly well done. So on behalf of the Council of Municipality of West Perth and the entire West Perth community, I would like to extend my heartfelt congratulations to the U18 Mitchell Meteors, the coaches and staff. Thank you very much. So what we'll do, so Dean is going to come up and he's going to read your names, and he'll stand probably here and I'll stand over there and I'll present the plaque. So we'll call you up one at a time. You can come up here and I'll present the plaque, and then you can go around the table there and back down to your seat. Okay? Very simple. Good. Thank you.
Yeah, so good evening, everybody. So I will start with the players that were not able to attend this evening. So there was Shawnee DeJong, Tegan Hickling, Nyla Pawich, Jade Hugen, Ellie Morrison, Ali DeJong, and Maddie Bernard. So the coaches will be given the plaques for those players, and those plaques can be given out to those players at a later time. So number 2, Cora Smith, come on up. Number 5, Shirley Phelps. Number 6, Brooklyn French. Number 7, Andrea Kelly. Started a trend here, I think. So, number 9, Josie Walker. Number 11, Maggie McCarthy. Number 12, Grace Laverty. Number 14, Kaylin Klumper. Number 17, Brooklyn Boville. Number 18, Claire McCorkindale. Number 19, Alexis Getler. And number 31, Leyland Bamborough. So all championship teams have a championship staff. So we'll start with the head coach, Jordan Elgie. Assistant coach, Kevin Getler. Trainer, Pam Schoonerwood. And trainer, Sam Hairfeld. Like this is a special occasion for council too, because not often do they get the chance to receive handshakes at a meeting. So congratulations to everyone. Well done.
Okay, so that concludes the award presentation. You're welcome to stay. You know, if you wish, totally your call, but we'll get into our regular council meeting at this time. Yeah. Moving on then. We have a number of items under the consent agenda. We have actually 15 of them altogether. Is there anything there that anybody would like pulled and dealt with separately? Or maybe an explanation of just what it is? Councilor Fournier?
Just resolution 5.1, the resolution regarding licensed home-based childcare operators.
Okay,
They're not asking for much. They're just asking for a few
Support.
extra positions be available for children to have childcare before school and after school. It's not actually affecting the full-time childcare offered by these providers, but even that little bit of extra leeway would be of enormous help to some families in the area. So I would definitely recommend supporting that one. That one supports local business and local families.
sure. Okay,
Bunch of those.
all right. Well, is there anything else that anybody else would like pulled out at this time? Well, we can deal with that one right now if you wish. So the 5.1 is the resolution from the town of Petrolia with regards to, and I can bring it up here, I guess. It's a fairly lengthy letter. It's basically, I'll read the last sentence, that the province considers increasing the current goal of 33% access ratio to align better with the current provincial situation, anticipated population growth over the next 10 years. Does that catch it?
I'll just add, your worship, that legislation sets out the standards and the numbers of children that home care providers can have. And specifically, they're looking to add 2 positions specifically for before and after school care spaces with in addition to the permitted 6 full-time that are existing now. I think that would be the crux of it.
Okay. Nope, that's good. So Councillor Fournier is going to move that. Do we have somebody to second that? Councillor Duck? Any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. So then if there's nothing else, we'll approve the consent agenda 5.2 to 5.15. And I don't see anybody's hand going up to have a question. So do you want to move that, Bill? Okay, moved by Councillor O'Donnell. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Foster, that we approve the consent agenda. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Okay. So that brings us down to planning. And the first item is consideration of a consent application B12 23, the Hemmerling one. And Jerica is here tonight to talk to us about that one. So Jerica, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor McKenzie and Council. I'm just going to bring this up a little bit. Oh, and that over? There we go. That's better. So thank you. Tonight I am presenting for your information consent application B12-23. This is the severance application that is connected with zoning bylaw amendment that Council recently held a public meeting for back in June. And due to the input from the community, this application will be considered by the Perth County Land Division Committee. So this is in the Mitchell settlement area. It is in the western portion of Mitchell, just a block south of Huron Road on Victoria Street. And surrounding land uses are residential in area. The applicants are Hans and Edith Hammerly. Their agent is Josh Wagler of Stonecrest Engineering. And the proposal, oh, my clicker on. There we go. As I said, it's in the Mitchell settlement area. The Mitchell official plan designates this property as residential for residential uses, and the West Perth zoning bylaw places this in the Mitchell residential low density zone 2 or R2 zone. So this consent has been submitted concurrently with zoning bylaw amendment 07-2023.
The reason for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is because the proposed severed lot for the single detached house will be slightly undersized to the R2 zone. So they're asking for a reduction in lot area from 475 meters squared to 373.1 meters square, and a reduction in lot frontage from 15 meters to 11.7 meters. The proposed house will otherwise meet all other zoning bylaw requirements for the R2 zone, and the retained lot will be 662.3 meters squared in lot area with 20.7 meters of frontage on Victoria Street. And the uses are both permitted in the R2 zone. So I have a few slides that are just a photo of the property. So we have the existing house there that was constructed in 1953. And the applicants are proposing to sever off the portion of the lot to the left in the photo. For personal purposes, they wish to build the home for an immediate family member. So this is looking from across the street. And this is looking from the back of the property facing out towards the street. So this type of project is considered residential intensification under the provincial policy statement and the Perth County and Mitchell official plans. It basically is proposing that the lot be used to a higher use than it currently is by increasing the density. A concern that was noted by planning staff at the beginning of this application to the applicants, and which has been a concern of the surrounding community members, has been stormwater management. The applicants were required to submit a stormwater management, a lot grading and drainage plan, which they would have to do for any development on this lot. There's currently a private catch basin that's at the front of the property, and what the applicants are proposing is another private catch basin be installed in the rear to bring water out to the storm sewers in front. This has been reviewed by the chief building official, and the municipal engineer and public works staff have no comments or no current municipal easements or swales on this property. Building design is also a really key part of residential intensification. So when the applicants were contemplating applying for the proposal, planning staff asked that they prepare building designs. So those were submitted with the application. Here's a sampling from them. That we have the front building face and then the rear building face. And then we have each side. So that concludes my presentation. The planning department is asking if West Perth can comment on the conditions of the consent to ensure that the municipality's needs are met. And I am happy to answer any questions on this proposal. The planning department is in support of this application despite the neighborhood opposition. The neighbors definitely have a variety of concerns. A lot of them can be addressed through the zoning bylaws, so things like adequate off-street parking, backyard recreational space. This lot will have it. There are other concerns that the neighbors have on, say, aesthetics and neighborhood change. And I think that's a representation of just how much this community cares about providing input. And I think it's a very good thing that how engaged they are. However, we still need to consider that change will be necessary for our community over time, and residential intensification over the long term, especially in lots like these where there's no technical reason to say no to the severance, is generally considered a benefit in the long term. So thank you for that, and I'm happy to answer any questions again.
Okay, thanks, Jerica. Any questions for her on this particular application? Councillor Phelps?
Just a question, when it's a private drain, so they can take that drain out later? Or who monitors, like I understand if we make it a waterway and the municipality controls it, we have control of it, but when it's privately owned, there's concern that these drains will just be removed once everything's done. And water is in that particular lot, water, everything runs to there and it is a concern. And I think the neighbors have a legitimate concern, just looking at the grading that's going on, even with the neighboring house that was existing that they renovated and then they did the grades on the house that was there. It changed quite a bit from what the original house was and everything's going towards that east lot now. So it's just a question.
Yes, thank you, Counselor. For this scale of application, because I spoke with West Perth staff kind of about the implications of this. The municipality of West Perth would not want this to be a public drain because then you would be responsible and liable for maintenance of it over the long term and its functioning. There's various pieces of legislation in Ontario where you can't purposely flood out your neighbor's property. And it is within the interest of the property owners that the catch basin that they install will be up to code and will be able to handle the stormwater on that lot. And I feel it's important to note that if this property owner wanted to say build an accessory dwelling unit or any such thing, like where the location of the building on the lot would be handled through the building permit system, would be subject to lot grading and drainage, even if this wasn't a severance or rezoning application. Does that answer your question?
I think also, Jerrica, if I remember right, our engineers that we use in the municipality have looked at this, have they not, and commented that well, I think on the original sketch, there was the size of the drain that was going to go in there and it was going to be increased, if I remember right. But I think our engineers had looked at it and had commented that would suffice.
Yes, Mayor McKenzie. So the municipal engineer on the existing stormwater management basically had no comments just because there's no files or there's nothing on record for like what the existing stormwater management is for this lot in particular. But when they saw the lot grading plan, yes, basically the comment says that it should work, and then they will submit a final lot grading and drainage plan once they go to finalize their building permit and application.
Okay. Anybody else? Any comments? No hands going up? Okay, well, thanks, Jerrica. So we do have a recommendation here. And that is that the Council of Municipality of West Perth received a report entitled Consent Application File B1223. Hammerly affecting lands described as Part Block B, Plan 349, 60 Victoria Street, Mitchell Ward, Municipality of West Perth, and that West Perth Council forward the conditions listed in the staff report below to the County of Perth Land Division Committee for Consent File B1223, affecting the property legally described as Part Block B, Plan 349, 60 Victoria Street, Mitchell Ward, Municipality of West Perth. We have a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Fournier and a seconder, Councillor Foster. Okay. Any further questions? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on, we have a report, I think, from Bob McLean with regards to a variance for a fence application. Bob, are you prepared to speak to that? I know you have a report here, so.
Thank you, Mayor. Council. Yes, I'm ready to. Audrey and I had worked on the report this in front of you, and if there are any questions, I'm able to field them.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, questions with regards to the application for a higher fence? No, Counselor Foster?
What was the original reason for height restrictions in the fence bylaws?
Bob, can you answer that?
Yes, I
Why
can.
6 feet?
When we first looked at introducing a fence bylaw, a lot of the neighboring municipalities at the same time either had fencing bylaws or were improving their fencing bylaws. One of the major concerns with a higher fence was the concern from the OPP about fortification of property. So without regulating the type of fence or height of the fence, you could have a barricade that would restrict emergency access.
Any other comments with regards to that? We get a seconder for that? Alec, did you second that? Oh, I thought Andrew moved it. Did he not? Oh, okay, all right, okay, all right. All right. Any other questions with regards to the fence then? The fences out here, they're all 6 feet, I take it?
Actually, these fences are 5 feet.
They're about- Out here is 6, that's what I
Yeah.
thought, it looks taller. So. Okay, all right, if there's no further questions, then we do have a recommendation here, and it's that the municipality of West Perth deny the fence variant applications for the properties located at 217 Pond, 219 Pond, 221 Pond, and 223 Pond. We have a mover and seconder for that now. Deputy Mayor Tomkowski and seconded by Councillor Rose. Any further discussion on this? Everybody seems to be kind of sitting on their hands here. Andrew, go ahead.
I understand that it's like not a necessary variance, but I'm just wondering why exactly we would particularly care. I mean, it's clearly not in the interests of fortifying his property. I mean, if it doesn't contravene like the sort of stated reason for having that 6-foot rule, why do we care? Maybe he's just really tall and he wants to have a taller fence. Like I would find a 6-foot fence kind of pointless. I can just walk up and Mr. Wilson the darn thing.
Bob?
Our fencing bylaws was written back in the early 2000s, so it may need some work. We could take that direction to look at updating the fence, but our current bylaw has set the standard.
So in other municipalities, is there any exceptions that you're aware of? Or 6 feet is the standard height across?
In our industrial area, 6 feet is the minimum. They do go as high as 8 feet. I'm not aware of any other municipality that has set a higher or a lower standard, except in swimming pool regulations.
Yeah, certain circumstances maybe require it, but Phil, go ahead.
I think in this circumstance, if every neighbor's building the same, it's gonna be consistent. It's not gonna be a 6, an 8, a 6. It's gonna be all the same. They're all in favor of the same style, so I think I'll agree with what they're saying on the 8.
It would be 8 feet at the back and then the side fences are to be 6, if I understand the sketches right. Side yards would be 6 foot, but the back would be 8, so, yeah.
I think the variance application request is for 10 feet at the rear yard and 6 on the side.
Once again,
Sorry. No, go ahead, Marty.
once again, the reason for all this is because the difference on the grades between the people on one side and then the other side. I can kind of understand, because I was in a similar situation over in Napier Street, when we built our house, we went to what we were told to build it. And then the engineers came along, that different engineers that did behind me. And it was up about 3.5 or 4 feet higher. I almost needed a retaining wall. So I can kind of understand if they want a little bit of privacy. If you're on the far side where it's higher, fence might only seem maybe a little, this is exaggerating, but
Yeah.
maybe only this high. You know, if the fence is down in. So I can kind of understand a little bit if they want a bit of privacy because of the difference in the lot grades.
Okay.
No, I was just reading the follow-up letter here that they were saying they propose a compromise solution that believes strikes a balance between privacy and maintaining the aesthetics of the neighborhood. The 6-foot fence with 2 feet of lattice, which would be
Yeah.
8 feet.
So
So they're,
that's where I got the 8 feet.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So they moved from the 10 and then they went to, we're looking at the 8, but I don't think, Bob, 2 feet of lattice is like, if you get a good wind, it isn't gonna stand up to that too much, is it? My opinion.
That was one of the original concerns with the limitation on the height. As you go up, the more wind resistance you have, the more maintenance and everything else is compounded.
Anybody else? Councillor Foster?
Did we receive comments from the people on the other side of the fence? I don't remember the name of the road is for that.
There's
But for the
nothing,
new
nothing
development is?
in our pocket from the other ones, I don't think.
There have been no occupancies granted on Thames Avenue.
I'll read the motion once more and then we'll see if we get a mover and seconder then, or how you want to do this. We do have a mover and seconder? Who was the mover and seconder? Sorry. Oh, that's right. Okay, all right. So it has been moved, duly moved and seconded, okay? Nicholas?
If I may, Mayor McKenzie, I was wondering what the process might look like after we would deny an application. Could the applicant come back again with a revised application a second time to council, or how would the process look following? Or no, I guess then it just means that if they wanted a building permit for a fence, that they needed to comply to the bylaw.
If the variance application is denied or fails, they would be restricted to the 6-foot height. So as I had one more comment, as the grade comes down from north to south on the back of these properties, the fence would step down to the lower elevations at Henry and Thames, or Henry and Pond Street. So there will be some adjustment in the height of the fence as it comes down through the backyards.
Phil?
I guess, and that being said, with the adjustment, you probably are 8 here and 6 then on Pond. Would that be close?
I don't have the exact elevations to answer your question accurately, but I think there would be about, I'm going to estimate 2 feet of elevation difference from north to south.
Anybody else? Has everybody had a look at it? I know I drove by it a couple of times and had a look at it. Okay. Andrew?
Are we allowed to just offer him a compromise? Like if it's 2-foot height difference and it's a 6-foot rule, usually just measure it from the other side sort of deal. I mean, the 6-foot height for a fence, really, I mean, it all comes down to what side of the fence you're measuring it on. If you're talking about grade, you measure from one side, you measure from the other, or you measure from both sides at equidistant and you average it. I mean, 3 different ways of getting the same height on the same, or different heights on the same fence.
Yeah.
Pick one that's to his advantage.
The fence height is regulated from grade elevation at the property line. Property grading has been looked at on Pond Street, and we're ready to receive the final grading certificates on those properties. I understand they're pending. So with that being said, the rear elevation would be set at the property line. and then it would step down.
I would just offer, so the first point of the question is that council can do as council wishes. So if council wants to not deny or meet in the middle or grant 10 or something else none of us have thought of, it's up to council.
Bill?
I think we meet in the middle at 8.
I would certainly second that, yeah.
Well, what, we do have a motion on the floor. So I would suggest if you want to end up at 8 feet, that you would vote against the motion for 6, and then we'll open it up for another motion if so wish.
We could,
That proper protocol?
you could, I think if,
Ask for amendment?
yeah, you can,
Do it as an amendment? Well, the mover and seconder, are you willing to change it from 6 to 8 feet?
So that's all the way around from 6 to 8 feet back inside.
It's just the back, Dean, because the side, they had agreed already to put 6 feet in there.
Yeah, the variance request was just for the rear yard fence.
No, I'm fine with that.
And who seconded that? Andrew?
uh,
Yeah, okay. So you're okay if we make that 8 feet then? Okay, so then you want to reword that motion? Yes, go ahead.
So when they go 8 feet, that's 8 feet of solid fence then? Fence board.
That's correct.
yeah,
I'll let you read the motion. Oh, question? Sorry. Oh, Alex, go ahead.
So would the building department increase its requirements then for how strong the fence is if it's taller? That was a concern when the original bylaw was made, or is it going to be, like, how does that change?
The proposed fence is designed with 6x6 posts and lateral bracing with an alternating board pattern. So I don't anticipate any adverse reaction by going an extra 2 feet with the material. Obviously, if the fence was priced at 6 feet or at 10 feet, the difference in height would vary the cost of the fence.
Okay. Yeah. go
I
ahead.
just want to make a comment about process and I don't want to delay the vote too long, but I just want to sort of button up everything that's been said. And I want to just repeat again that, as municipality, you have a fence bylaw to establish height, so you don't end up with what looks like fortifications all through your community and allowing and having some cap. And our community has picked a cap of 6 feet. And it's good governance to allow people to make an application and under unique circumstances for unique properties, make exceptions to that policy. So I just want to say, I think this is a demonstration of good governance. The council, as Dan has said, has the choice to do as they please. I presume you all worry about precedents when you make choices like this, but the unique circumstances of each property often dictate whether or not it's justified for that property. So in coming to the compromise that you've come to, I think you're all sort of, or at least the mover and seconder at this point in time, are feeling that given the unique circumstances of this property, it makes sense to allow for the compromise because of the grade. That doesn't mean you would be bound by that very same choice because the next property would be slightly different. And as a council, you have that choice, but I don't see any need to go further and direct staff to review that we should allow 8 feet everywhere, because I would have extreme concerns about that. Because again, I think, you want to generally have a standard which you provide exceptions to rather than a free for all. And so I just wanted to lay that groundwork before you vote.
Okay, on that note, I think we're ready for the vote. So we're gonna get the motion read to us once more, and then we'll take the vote.
that the council of the municipality of West Perth approve a fence variance to a height of 8 feet for the rear property line for the properties located at 217 Pond Street, 219 Pond Street, 221 Pond Street, and 223 Pond Street. And I would just look to Bob to make sure that's clear enough for his team. Okay.
Good. All those in favor of that resolution? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Thanks, Bob. All right, I don't believe we have anything from the fire chief tonight, so we have Rosemary here from the library. That works too. I was going to say you're going to have to move it down, but that'll work.
It was fine for me the way it was before, but that's
Yeah.
fine. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. The library board met on June 27th. I believe you have the minutes in front of you along with the CEO operational highlights from March, April, and May, and the statistics report as well. If I could just very briefly highlight a couple of services that the library is bringing to West Perth. The first being immigrant settlement services from YMCA of Three Rivers. They are now coming, as of June, they are coming in once a month and bringing in a settlement worker with them. And this person will assist newcomers to Canada with everything from forms that they need to fill out, housing, education and language assessments, and that sort of thing. So that's something that we didn't previously have in the area. So we're very happy to welcome them. Because YMCA is now coming into West Perth, they've asked us to connect them with other municipalities in Perth County so that they can bring newcomer services elsewhere in Perth County so that everyone can be addressed. So we're very happy to facilitate that with them. We are also bringing Service Canada to West Perth. Now they have only at this point agreed to the 1 day, but we're hoping that this will become a regular service. So Service Canada will be here on Friday, September 29th. They'll be at the library the entire day and on a drop-in basis. People don't have to make appointments. They will offer everything that a Service Canada office usually offers. So assistance with passport applications, EI, CPP, whatever else they generally do. And we'll see if we can't make that an ongoing service. We would be very happy to do that. And finally, there are some partnerships that the library is continuing with to offer free community passes to individuals and families in West Perth. And this will allow them, now that the weather is nice, children are out of school, it would invite individuals and families to explore different areas in and around Perth County. So we have recently brought on board free PC Connect bus passes. And we've also now, we're now, as of this morning, able to offer free passes to the Region of Waterloo museums. The museums have never before offered free access passes to any organization outside of Waterloo Region. So we're very happy that they've made an exception for us. I'm happy to answer any questions that may have come up in the meeting.
Okay, thanks, Rosemary. Questions for Rosemary? Andrew, you have a question, or this is the way you said?
I'm just mildly curious as to how she accomplished that with museums. Rosemary is quite imposing at times.
Yeah. Oh, good job.
I can be persuasive.
Deputy Mayor Jankowski.
Through you, Your Worship, thanks for the presentation, Rosemary. So with the new immigrant settlement services being offered at the library as well as Service Canada, I'm presuming that our communications or community engagement coordinator will help you advertise this to the community through our social media channels as well as other things like the Mitchell newspaper and so forth.
Yes, I did have an opportunity to speak with her last week when we were all together. We did have a conversation about that. So she's very happy to assist us with getting the word out. We've also mentioned it to the editor of the Mitchell Advocate so that he can put that in there also. This will go out in all of the social media accounts that the library runs. It's also going to be on our website. All of the other libraries in Perth County are also aware of this. And it's the community passes in particular are also accessible through the municipality's intranet. So our colleagues here at Town Hall are also aware of it. They are happy to publicize this as well. But yes, we are going to make sure as many people as possible know about these. The Service Canada in particular, because it's not yet a regular occurrence, we're very happy to turn it into something that is a more regular visit. So if they do have a very good turnout on September 29th, it will help them to determine that this is a location that should be regularly on their schedule.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rosemary. Any other questions? Okay, moving on then, we have a recommendation here that Municipality of West Perth received the library board meeting June 27th, 2023 information report. Mover and seconder for that, moved by Councillor Harold, seconded by Councillor Chessel. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on then, next item then is our treasurer's report, and it's 2023 property tax write-offs and supplements. I was going to say a good news story, but it's not very good, is it?
Well, thanks, Mayor McKenzie and members of council. So I wanted to give you an update on the write-offs, just because there was quite a few properties listed at the beginning of the budget process, over 50. And so we had increased our write-offs to 440,000. And then because we're partway through the year, and wanted to tell you that we've processed 36 of those 50 properties. And so that's roughly, in the report's 176,000. And then the additional properties get us to 50 would be another 95,000 in write-offs still to come. But because we budgeted for it, we're okay. And then when we looked at the supplementals, oh, and the one thing also for the write-offs was this year was the new farm forestry exemption. And so we weren't sure how much to allocate for the budget, but when we looked at the numbers during budget, it was estimated a couple $1,000s. So we're looking at 3,800. So we were within that budget number. And then kind of the wild card in the write-offs is any buildings that get removed. We don't know those. And so anyway, just an update for you for the write-offs. And then, so the total write-offs right now to date is 294,000. And then supplementals. So supplementals are additional revenue for us. So we budgeted 150. And then again, we're not really sure when we budget how much new buildings we're going to have. So it's a bit of kind of look at the trend a little bit. So and we get monthly reports from MPAC. So we're constantly, every month we're getting new supplementals, but we process them for the final. So the final bill right now on the books, we have 43,000 in additional revenue. We just haven't billed it out. We bill it with the final bill. That makes sense. So the budget summary in the report, basically budget said that levy impact would be 290,000 and the actuals are sitting at 250. We're within the budget, those two items. So if there's any question on that, I'll take them.
Questions for Wendy? Andrew?
I'm not entirely certain it's specifically a Wendy question. It's just that these property tax write-offs where we're converting from residential to farm aren't at the same time, aren't we being told by the Ontario government that they're going to be opening up our rural roads and be putting residential on farmland? Like we're allowing property tax write-offs that we are also going to be like reversing quite soon in some cases. Why would we do that?
You want to take a stab at that? Wendy? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so what happens in this process, the write-offs are kind of like a specific transaction that's happening. So when a farm sells, it'll revert back to residential. And then the farmer has to fill out an application. They have to go through the proper channels to get it switched back. And if, so we send notification of this, MPAC does, but it's AgriCorp that approves the application. So sometimes there's a lag in when a farmer gets the application to send it in. Sometimes they don't see it and it stays as residential. So when their property tax bill comes in, that's why I gave that example. Like if it's in the wrong class, they're paying $15,000 instead of almost 4,000. So it should kind of catch their attention. But the municipality can't change it. So the change only happens when MPAC changes the tax class and then we get notification. So when the bill comes in, we have to charge them at the residential rate until it gets switched back into farm.
I will just add that, that the properties are often will have two rates. They'll have a part for the farm part of the property, but they'll pay residential for the part where the house is. And so this is where if new houses are added in the rural areas, whether it be by provincial policy or whether it be because they can have additional houses on current lots, that would be a residential addition. So the whole farm doesn't switch, just that part. And so that way you're going to get taxed for what your utility is. But as Wendy has pointed out, when they change hands, they automatically revert to residential. And these are the ones that have to be brought back to agriculture. And it's that lag that causes these write-offs.
So it makes it hard for us to budget when they're off a year or two.
Yeah, so it'll be the question from Councillor Fournier is it part of the property or the whole thing? And these would be for whole properties. This would be for the agricultural part that was by default went to residential taxation, but should have been moved back to agriculture, but it didn't happen in time for it to be caught. So the write-off, there was an invoice and then they asked for the rebate essentially, or the return.
Usually in a farm transaction or a sale like that, a good lawyer will give you a heads up that you need to apply for that from AgriCorp. But they do lag a little bit. There's some time in there. The question I have, Wendy, is with regards to supplemental. So how much of a lag is there from impact? If you build a shed or a house or a barn until they're around and assess it, that it gets in there. Like they were a year or so behind at one time. Are they a little quicker now or not?
Yeah, so I was asking Lori before meeting and she was saying that farmland building structures are still lagged because they're required to come on site. Whereas in town or urban areas, they use the building permits process through iCloud. So all the drawings and stuff go to MPAC right away and they base their assessment on that. So we can see changes as quick as 6 months right now for subdivisions. But farm is a year, maybe 2.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's the way it is, you know? So, any other questions for Wendy on that? Okay, if not, we do have a recommendation here that Municipality of West Perth received the 2023 property tax write-off and supplementals information report. We have a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Rose, seconded by Councillor Fournier. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Okay, and the next item is utility, yours too.
So we just wanted to update council on a little project we were working on and trying to increase our eSend, which is electronic billing for utilities. So we had a goal of increasing it by 10%. And in the report, you can see that we've surpassed that. We've been tracking them since January. And in the report, it talks about some of the benefits of doing eSend. One is cost savings because we don't have to manually process a paper product. So the bill, envelope, postage, and then goes out in the mail. Whereas if it's eSend, it goes directly by email. So it's quicker, it's faster, it's less processing. And then the end user can always go back and look at a bill because it's in their email. So those are the positives of it. And we've only kind of promoted the utilities, but the same feature is also available for tax. Anybody wanted to sign up for eSend, they can get their tax bill the same way through email. And it doesn't go through the postage system. It's faster, quicker, and then especially with tax time, it's handy to have your tax bill right there in your email box. We get a lot of calls for reprints, those at tax time. So if there's any questions, I'll take them.
Okay, questions for Wendy on that? None? Okay, we do have a recommendation here that Municipality of West Perth receives the utility eSend information report. I'll look this way. Councillor Phelps and Councillor O'Donnell. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Okay, and then the next one is the development charges.
Okay, so this one is, it'll look new this year. Legislation has different requirements than what was previously reported on the development charges, so it has to show the full funding of a project. And I believe I know it was really small, and I apologize for that. We just wanted to make sure you could see the full line across. So paper has been provided so that you could I was just going to read through just for people that are watching and also for your reference later. If you want to look at the Henry Street Bridge, I can walk you through that example of how the new report looks and kind of the impacts of it. So on Appendix 2, at the top, it'll say the Henry Street Bridge. So it'll be the report that's got a lot of lines on it. So the Henry Street Bridge, it started in 2018 for costs, and they were completed in 2020. The total cost of the bridge was 3.4 million. And then if you look at the top line, basically is going to tell you how it's funded. So essentially, we went back to all the development charge bylaws, because that's how it was passed before, it was through the bylaw. We tallied them all up, and prior years was $419,000 in DCs that had been collected that have been applied to the bridge. And then this year we had collected 393,000 in DC charges and interest. So based on the formula in the report, we allocated $84,000 towards that bridge. And then the next line is the cash flow funding source, which is the biggest impact from changing the way it has been reported. So essentially, this bridge was cash flowed through the reserves by $794,000. So essentially, that fund, those funds are due back to the regular reserve. So as we collect, as the years go by, we'll every time there's pot of money from development charges, we'll need to pay back this column. And in the report, it talks about that. And then so the next line is through other reserves or reserve funds or draws. So this could be from the levy, could be from a reserve. It was just kind of a math to get it to balance. And then the debt financing for the bridge, we borrowed $1.9 million. So if you were to take the 3.4 and subtract all those numbers, you come to zero. That's how it was funded. So you could go down the list and read all those projects and see how it was funded. So then the next little box beside talks about kind of the DC study part. So it's heavy math, but in the report, it talked about the bridge is that it benefit 50% of the existing growth. So what you do is you take 50% of the actual cost. So then the DCs can fund up to $1.7 million. The rest comes from another source. So then you have your growth. And then in the study, it talked about 75% of your DC can come from residential, and then 25% is non-residential. And then based on our study and the bylaw, we don't collect for non-residential. So then the next two lines are kind of your math. So 1.2 is all that you can raise through development charges. And then essentially the 400,000 comes from levy. So that's how you read that report, and that kind of flows down to all the projects and services. And then on Appendix 1 is kind of a summary. So Appendix 2 is very granular, and that's all the detail to support the summary of Appendix 1. So Appendix 1 basically says you started with a DC balance of 491,000, and then throughout 2023 we collected development charges, and then we accrued interest, and then we had the shortfall, which is the phase-in. So again, that would be that far column, the $58,000 to give you a total of 254,000. And then so in the resolution, we're asking for council to pass the distribution of what was what needs to be allocated. So essentially, we're putting back those funds into the reserves. So if you read across, it says 84,000 to transportation services, 22,000 into stormwater, 11 into fire, 51 into water, and 223 into wastewater. So those funds go back into the reserve because we cash flowed it from there, because all the projects have been completed. So we're kind of cleaning. This is a year of cleanup. So next year it won't look so busy. It won't be so many numbers on it, because it'll only be what we collected and how it was dispersed. And then farther down, the closing balance in the DC will be 352,000, and that is made up of Parks and Rec, 307,000, grow studies, which we'll use for 35,000, and then the wastewater of 10. And when I say grow studies being used, it's for the master plan or the new DC study. Because once you get a new DC background study, we can't collect for growth studies anymore. And then the last line is, not the last, second last line is outstanding commitments to reserve. So that is what's owed. So 2.9 million is owed to the reserves. And you can see the, what we call them services, instead of project base, you get the project base on Appendix 2, that basically is services. Each of those services owe the reserve, because that's how it was cash flowed or paid for. So if there's any questions on this new report, new style, this is the way it'll look going forward until legislation changes.
Next week, maybe?
Could be. Hope not.
Okay, questions for Wendy on the development charges? I don't think we've ever had it broke out quite that clear before, so certainly appreciate that. Councillor Foster?
Do you think it's better with the new changes?
Definitely. I think it was a bit eye-opening to kind of work through how everything was, and maybe I'll highlight too a couple of the items. If you go down near the bottom, it'll be the pumping station on James Street. The way it was done before, it was kind of like a little bit was put to every project instead of the project was done and then we cleared it off the books, because when the project's done, the costs have gone through our books. Is that we did over collect. So on there, it'll say 130,000 is it in brackets. That means we over collected for that project. And we would have never known that unless we did this process. And so this process identifies that. So what we did is you can move it in that same service. So we just applied it to the sewer trunk on Henry Street. So yeah, it helped. I think it gave us more, it disclosed a lot more, and I think it's fair for everybody to know how it was funded and processed. to the books.
Anybody else? Any questions for Wendy? Okay, if not, we'll move on here. So we do have a recommendation. And it is that Municipality of West Perth received the 2022 development charges, reserve fund statements, and parkland dedication reserve fund report. That the treasurer's annual statement of development charges, reserve funds for 2022 be made publicly available on the municipal's website and upon request, and that council approve the transfer of $393,038.91 as December 31st, 2022 from the development charges reserve to reserve for transportation bridges and culverts of $84,995.53. Wastewater reserve fund for stormwater, $22,409.99. Reserve for the fire department, $11,495.75. Water reserve fund, $51,128.35. And wastewater reserve fund, $223.09 and $223,009.29. We have a mover and seconder for that, Deputy Mayor Pinkowski and Councillor Duck. All those questions, all those in favor? Did you have a question, Doug? Nope. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you, Wendy. Okay, the next item then, I guess, is for you, Dan, and it's the West Perth Transit Agreement.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, council. So before council tonight, we're just seeking authorization to enter into the new West Perth Transit Agreement. Bit of history around the matter is West Perth Transit came previously and asked to up the request from, which was the standard $12,000 to $15,000 annually. And at the time, council had directed staff to proceed with that and update the agreement. The agreement was also just the original agreement. So Vicky, just with community outreach and myself went through, did not reinvent the wheel, just kind of went through and updated the agreement, removed more of the procedural matters. So the meat's still the meat of the agreement. And we also just clarified on the committee. Previously, we had two citizen representatives from each ward, and for quite some time now, they've remained vacant. So we've just moved those over into citizens at large. So it's not specifically required that they're from a ward. That's an example of a change, and just added clarity on who actually sits on the board of the mobility bus. Sorry, West Perth Transit. Really, if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. We did budget accordingly for the 15,000. We knew this change was coming. From here, the process would be that all other service and user groups need to go to their respective boards and get approval as well. So we won't be signing anything immediately. It'll make its rounds through everyone for approval, and then we'll come back and sign it then if so approved.
Questions for Dan on that? So ours increased by $2,000, $3,000 rather. So did the other partners in this, did their shares increase as well?
They did not.
Other questions? Okay, we have a motion here that the Council of the Municipality of West Perth approve the revised West Perth Transit Agreement, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the necessary documents. Got a mover and second? The next item then is council reports. Doug, you're doing this one about the Motherwell commemorative project?
Yes, Your Worship. So we met July the 10th with the Motherwell commemorative committee at our Heritage and Culture And what they're proposing is they have a large granite rock that's in the field. And they would like to put it on the vacant lot at Motherwell, which we own, but can't be used because it's floodplain. The discussion was, we were trying to do a thing with the Lost Villages. They would like to do something immediately, and it's kind of a unique situation. They have more land than most people. Most of the other ones only have a place for a sign. They're willing to foot the bill for the whole thing. So they have someone's gonna move the rock and put it in. They're just looking for us for direction. They just really wanted to get it moved when the crop comes off to the location and get permission for that right now. So that was basically what they're looking for from us. Yes. Sorry.
It says where the old Motherwell store is. The store is owned by the Upper Thames. It's down the road from that. It's a lot beside.
Beside the store, there's a vacant lot where
Yeah,
the fence
it
line
does-
is there.
The report says
There's
where the
40
store
feet there.
was.
Pardon me?
The report says where the store was, which isn't ours. It says on the property of the former.
I can
store.
help. So if you look at the photo that's on the screen, most of that property is in the ownership of the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, except for a small piece that used to be the lawn bowling. And so this group really wants to work on that small piece right about where it's being outlined on the screen. So it's a minor nuance, but it would be on that piece that's owned by the municipality of West Perth. It's in our ownership. We anticipate meeting with the Conservation Authority. I think you'll see this property all managed together, notwithstanding the ownership by the Conservation Authority or the municipality. I believe the buildings are all gone, or the last building's anticipated to go. And we'll be coming up with a plan for its management in the future as well.
Other questions? Okay, Doug, your light's on. You have a question? No, okay. Yeah, okay. So the recommendation that we have coming out of this is that Council Municipality of West Perth approve the proposal by Motherwell Heritage Committee to relocate a stone to the former location and of the Motherwell store, or by the Motherwell store, however you want it, at concession 17, part lot 24. And that council directs staff to establish a site plan for the Motherwell commemorative site so that we know exactly where the stone's going to go. So do we have a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Harold, seconded by Councillor O'Donnell. Any further discussion? Yep, go ahead.
I'll just make the point of clarity in case it's out there, is that we're going to take this as permission from council that we can just put the stone on there for now, and then we'll figure out where to move it if it needs to be moved in a few inches here or there. That way, we have a rough site plan already, but the main thing was just getting the rock off said property for the crops, get it on this property, and then we'll kind of fine tune it as we go, but we'll come back to council with that.
Well, I don't think you're going to move the rock
No, I
after
know.
it's placed there. Not by hand anyways. Okay. So we had a mover and seconder for that. We haven't taken the vote yet, though, right? All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. All right, and then we have some bylaws here. Bylaw, actually, we just have one, I guess, bylaw 35, being a bylaw provide for the collection of actual costs and repairs and maintenance of municipal drainage works. Did I skip over the drains? Did I, on the other page? There was a list of drains, I know that. Just the bylaw, that's all they were in, so I haven't skipped this up then. Okay, so the bylaw is for a collection of costs and repairs for maintenance municipal drainage works for completed in 2018 to 2022 in the municipality of West Perth. And the recommendation is, and they're listed there, I don't know whether anybody had any questions, but the recommendation is the Council Municipality of West Perth give first and second reading to bylaw 35, 2023, this 10th day of July. Andrew, Alex, rather?
It's not a conflict of interest because it's the Drainage Act, but the Flat Creek drain does, I think, affect me
No,
Or
I
my
think
parents.
you're exempt from municipal
because it's
drains.
Drainage Act, but I
Yeah.
feel I should say it.
Okay, no, that's fine. So I'm looking for a mover and seconder to do the first and second reading. Counselor Phelps, Counselor Rose, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. And then the next is to give third and final reading to bylaw 35, 2023. Have a mover and seconder for that, Counselor O'Donnell. And a seconder, please. Counselor Harold. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Okay, coming events, next council meeting is July the 31st. There is a housing tour in Stratford, but I think it's just Dean and I that are going on that one, maybe. Any notices of motion? Any other business? We do have a closed session coming up, so if there's nothing further, we can go into closed session. The Municipality of West Perth proceed into closed session at 8:16 for the purpose of addressing a matter related to personal matters about an identifiable individual. CAO recruitment. So mover and seconder go into closed session. Councillor Vink and Councillor Chessel, all those in favor? That is carried. So we can just go in next, or it shouldn't be that long, Nicholas, I don't think, eh? 10 minutes if you want to wait, and then we'll be back. So, yeah, we can go here.